The history of the Supernova and Waikiki Wave type ride stretches back to 1987, before the first rides we now consider to be topspins were ever introduced. Vekoma was the first one to make a ride like this. Named the Canyon Trip, it was introduced in 1987. This ride has two straight arms, just like the now ubiquitous topspin, but unlike the topspin, the arms could rotate separated from each other. To allow that, the gondola consisted of two separate parts, located on three big metal columns. This allowed the main gondola to move in two parts, towards and away from each other, leading to a thrilling feeling that the two halves of the gondola would crash into each other.
Each part of the gondola had 5 rows of 4 seats each, making for a capacity of 40 riders per cycle. While the left side of the gondola was fixed, the right side of the gondola could slide forwards and backwards. The further the ends of both arms were from each other, the more space between the gondola. 3 of these rides were produced, and they went on to inspire a huge number of rides with a similar design.
All of these rides that we're aware of were most likely introduced in 1987. In no particular order, there was Gladiator's Gauntlet at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. This ride opened in 1987 and ran until 1993. After that, we're not really sure what happened to it. We also have the Canyon Trip, just named Canyon Trip. It was first located at Morey's Piers in the US. This was from 1987 up until 1988. Then it was relocated to the American Adventure Theme Park in the UK, where it operated from 1991 to 1994. It was then relocated to its final home at Camelot Theme Park, where it was named The Rack, and it operated there from 1995 until 2010.
And then we have one more in Japan, in Nagashima Spaland. It was also said to be named Canyon Trip, and the opening dates and closure dates are not sure at all, but from what I can find, it opened somewhere around 1987 and it closed between 1993 and 1996. And then Vekoma introduced the Waikiki Wave in 1991 as a newer version of the Canyon Trip. Unlike the Canyon Trip, the Waikiki Wave uses a normal gondola with riders seated facing outwards on each side, with 20 seats per side, making for a capacity of 40 riders per cycle, just like the Canyon Trip. To allow the arms to rotate separated from each other, the ride used a bending arm system.
When the ride is parked in the loading position, both arms are parallel to each other. Once the two arms begin to move at different speeds and in different directions, part of one arm will bend inwards towards the center to allow the gondola to move. The more both ends of the arms move away from each other, the more the bottom of one arm will bend inwards. This system is very similar to what Mondial used on their Supernova, which debuted 2 years prior to this ride, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment.
The first Waikiki Wave was sold in 1991 to the South Korean theme park named Lotto World. Sadly, it got removed after the 2012 season and it was replaced by a Zamperla Disco.
Six Flags Kentucky Kingdom also bought a Waikiki Wave. It was named the Quake. The ride sadly did not survive the 10-year closure of Kentucky Kingdom and is presumed to be scrapped.
At least 8 standard Waikiki Waves were produced. Sadly, only one of them remains operating today at Tashkentland in Uzbekistan.
2 years after the introduction of the original Canyon Trip, Mondial introduced the Supernova in 1989. The Supernova used a more traditional design than the Vekoma models. It featured a gondola with riders seated facing forwards, utilizing only a lap bar restraint compared to the over-the-shoulder restraints used on the Vekoma rides, with a capacity of 48 riders per cycle. It used a tilting arm design much like the later Waikiki Wave. The gondola could tip up to 90 degrees in any direction. The ride was operated via joystick, leading to no two cycles being the same.
Mondial intended this ride to be family-friendly while still exciting. This design proved to be a success as 11 of these rides would end up being produced, more than any other non-inverting ride of this type. 8 of these rides still remain operating, though 2 of them only appear sporadically. Most are traveling rides, though some were installed at parks, 2 of them. One at Alton Towers, which was named Bone Shaker and closed in 2003 and is now operating at Iberia Park or Terra Mítica in Spain. No more Supernovas were sold after 1995, with the model being officially discontinued in 2001.
Sariani and Moser introduced the Canyon Raft also in 1989. These rides were very similar to the Supernova, except the seats faced each other rather than all of them facing forwards. These rides also used over-the-shoulder restraints rather than lap bars found on the Supernova. Not much is known about this ride other than that at least 3 were produced and they are no longer in production. And though all of the rides listed above are no longer in production, Mondial is working to bring the design back with the still in development Mondial Blender. This ride works somewhat like a Supernova, but instead of the traditional gondola, it features 2 rotating arms with suspended seats. Much like the older Mondial rides, this ride will use lap bars as its primary restraint. Sadly, none have been sold as of 2021, and the ride is still in development.
So now I'm gonna tell a bit about my own experience with the Supernova. I have gotten a chance to ride a Supernova from Mondial, to be specific, the one at Terra Mythica, named La Colera de Aquiles. It is the one which was previously located at Alton Towers, and sadly it runs on an automatic cycle. But that's nothing new because it already operated an automatic cycle at Alton Towers. At Alton Towers it was relocated 3 times, and when it was first relocated it was changed from manual to automatic for a very weird reason, at least a rumor says that. So the rumors say that 2 operators were having a challenge to see who could get the gondola the closest to flipping, and it is said that they got to flip the gondola, and that's why Alton Towers decided to give it a automatic cycle. So that's just a rumor. I'm absolutely not sure if this is real or not, but if it is real, that's really funny and kind of ridiculous how these 2 operators managed to make this have an automatic cycle. The automatic cycle it has today is really bad. It only runs in one direction. The arms don't separate from each other that much, and the gondola barely gets any swing, so it's really boring. Still kind of fun, but it's really sad to see a ride with such great potential being operated like this, as you can see in the footage. Yeah, I really don't feel like I have experienced a Supernova because the cycle was so bad.
Yeah, it's definitely disappointing to see it operated like that, but there are still some traveling ones that do still have that manual cycle and are still look pretty fun. But it's definitely a hard to find ride model that if you do spot, you should definitely go ahead and ride it. Other than that though, stay tuned for the next episode of Flat Ride of the Week where we cover the upgraded version of these rides that we're able to invert. And if you have any questions, as always, feel free to ask them in the comments below. We hope you enjoyed the first episode of the new format of Flat Ride of the Week, and we will see you next week.